It's the year 1861. America is breaking apart. Brothers will soon take up arms against each other. Fields will run red with blood. And history books will later tell us a simple story: the noble North fought to free the enslaved, while the cruel South fought to keep them. Good versus evil. Freedom versus chains? But what if that's not the whole truth? What if the story you learned in school left out the most shocking parts? Yes, slavery was at the heart of it. But it wasn't only about morality. It was about money. Unimaginable amounts of money. Cotton was called white gold, and enslaved people were the hands that produced it. The South's entire economy depended on it, but the North wasn't innocent either. Northern banks financed Southern plantations. Northern textile mills spun that cotton into clothes. Northern ships carried it across the Atlantic. Slavery was not just a Southern stain. It was America's business model. And when the war began, the North's cause wasn't purely noble. Most Union soldiers weren't fighting to end slavery. They were fighting to preserve the United States. Even President Abraham Lincoln admitted it. He once wrote, "If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it." His mission changed later, but in the beginning, his goal was survival of the Union, not freedom for the enslaved. Then there were the border states: Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware. These states still allowed slavery but never joined the Confederacy. Imagine that. The so-called good side of the war included states that owned slaves. That simple black and white story we hear in school doesn't survive when you look closer. And while America fought itself, the world watched. Britain and France both considered supporting the Confederacy, not because they agreed with slavery, but because their industries depended on Southern cotton. There were moments when a single diplomatic decision in London or Paris could have changed the outcome of the war. If Britain had recognized the Confederacy as an independent nation, America's future would look very different today. Another forgotten truth is the role of African Americans. Nearly 200,000 black men fought in the Union Army. Some were free, others had escaped from slavery. They weren't just fighting for the Union. They were fighting for their families, their dignity, and the hope of true freedom. Their courage helped shift the balance of the war, yet their stories are rarely taught in classrooms. But the Civil War wasn't fought by men alone. Thousands of women also played roles that textbooks rarely mention. Some disguised themselves as men to fight on the battlefield. Others served as spies, slipping behind enemy lines to carry messages and gather intelligence. Harriet Tubman, yes, the same woman who led enslaved people to freedom through the Underground Railroad, also became a Union spy and even led a military raid that freed more than 700 enslaved people in South Carolina. The war was brutal beyond imagination. Over 600,000 soldiers died, more than in World War I and World War II combined for America. And many of those deaths didn't come from bullets, but from disease, starvation, and unsanitary conditions. In places like Andersonville Prison in Georgia, Union soldiers were crammed together with little food, no clean water, and almost no shelter. Thousands died in captivity, their suffering often ignored in the simplified version of history. And then came the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, a document that schools sometimes present as the magic moment slavery ended. But here's the uncomfortable truth: it only applied to the Confederate states, the ones rebelling against the Union. It did not free enslaved people in border states like Kentucky or Delaware. Freedom on paper was very different from freedom in reality. When the war finally ended in 1865 and the 13th Amendment was passed, slavery was officially abolished. But the struggle was far from over. The South quickly replaced slavery with new systems of control: black codes, Jim Crow laws, segregation, and widespread violence. Freed people were often forced into sharecropping, trapped in poverty, and kept from voting through intimidation and discriminatory laws. The chains were gone, but the cage remained. The Civil War is often remembered as a noble crusade that saved the Union and freed the enslaved. And in some ways, that's true. But the full story is darker, more complex, and more revealing. It wasn't just about morality. It was about economics, politics, power, and survival. It was a war where the so-called good side wasn't always pure, and the so-called bad side was upheld not just by the South, but by an entire nation that had benefited from slavery for centuries. And perhaps the most haunting truth is this: the Civil War never fully ended. Its scars are still visible in America today, in the struggle for racial justice, in political divides, in debates about freedom and equality. The echoes of that conflict still shape the nation. So, the next time someone tells you the Civil War was simply North versus South, heroes versus villains, remember the truth is far more complicated. It was a messy, bloody conflict that defined America's past and continues to shape its present. Now, I want to ask you, which part of this hidden history surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more untold stories, the ones schools never teach, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Because history is full of secrets, and we've only just begun to uncover them.